Hi there. The first casting announcement for House of the Dragon Season 3 was just made. James Norton as Ormund Hightower. Now, this is exciting more because it means we've officially passed the news drought that we've been in since the reactions to the end of Season 2 back in September to early October. Martin's blog posts and such. The discussions of all that. That is done. 4 months of inactivity. This casting was announced on January 31st, so really going into February, we're out of the news dead zone. That's over. And now, on a daily basis, like and subscribe, because every day they will be making, or could potentially be making, a big casting announcement of this scale, that there's other new characters they'll be putting in. Could happen tomorrow, for all I know. Or production crew news. I'm also going to go over directors in this, because filming starts roughly a month from now in March. 6 to 8 weeks, depends if they start in mid-March, when we start getting spy photos and filming news. So, more info on this casting. British actor James Norton is best known for being a main cast member on the TV series Happy Valley in Britain, and also on Grantchester. But he's been in a lot of things. Please check out his profile. Tell me in the comments if you recognize him from something else that you're familiar with that I'm not. He was also in the 2016 miniseries adaptation of War and Peace, and I think he had a minor role in that adaptation of Little Women with Saoirse Ronan. He was Timothée Chalamet's tutor or something. I have to check. It wasn't a big role, but he was in that too. He's been in a lot of things. Like every third person in the UK, he's guest starred on Doctor Who at one point or another. And most interesting, though, is an upcoming project. That there's already trailers and promo images for this, that BBC is making a big historical drama series about the Norman conquest of England in 1066, titled King and Conqueror, which stars Game of Thrones' own Nikolai Coster-Waldau as William the Conqueror. Well, James Norton is also going to be a main cast member in that, playing William's main rival, Harold Godwinson. And this will culminate with their two armies facing off at the climactic Battle of Hastings. As for Ormund Hightower, the character, he was mentioned in dialogue in Season 2, even though we hadn't seen him yet, that they mentioned that Ormund is the current head of House Hightower and Lord of Old Town. He's Otto Hightower's nephew. As he did say, my nephew is leading the main Hightower army. That remember back in early Season 1, Otto is not the head of House Hightower. It's his older brother, who we saw in the first half of Season 1, was Hobart Hightower. Apparently, Hobart died at some point off-screen in the 16 years' worth of time skips between the last we saw of him was at Rhaenyra and Laenor's wedding, telling Alicent the Hightowers will keep supporting her. And then there was a 10-year time skip and then a 6-year one, so at some point, he's in the books. He's dead by the time of the actual war, and was succeeded by his son, Ormund. By the way, I saw some people confused about this that said, oh, they changed this from the books, that Hobart wasn't his father in the thing. There's more than one guy named Hobart in House Hightower, just as Aegon and Viserys are recurring names in House Targaryen, or how there's a ton of guys named Bran among the Starks. Names repeat in dynasties is a point that Martin made. In the books, we actually didn't know the name of Otto's older brother, because he dies off screen, so there's just Ormund, his son, Otto's nephew. So they had to make one up. So there's a different character in the book who shows up later who is a minor Hightower cousin, distant third cousin, lower branch of the family, named Hobart Hightower. He's kind of a drunk. They named this his father after that one on the logic that Hobart is a recurring name among the Hightowers. Another big one is Gwaine, actually, like Alicent's brother Gwaine. Gwaine is a really popular name throughout the Reach because of all the stuff with Garth Greenhand's children and everything, but it's not a changed character. It's Hobart didn't have a name in the book. It was just Ormund's father, so they went names repeat in families. Either way, Hobart dies off screen, so Ormund is the head of the family and actual ruler of House Hightower. Remember when Daemon says Otto is a second son who won't inherit? because it goes to his nephew Ormund. Now, the important thing, a relatively important character, because as the head of House Hightower, he's personally leading their main army as it advances through the Reach, which is not just an army, but it is the largest army the Greens have. I mean, the Lannister army is also big and probably better equipped because they can afford more stuff because they're rich, but officially in the books, by the numbers, the Hightower army is the biggest one they have. For that matter, it's the biggest army in the entire war because they make clear the Greens have the numbers advantage because they're the coastal elite who have all the coastal cities on the west coast, so they have most of the population, most of the infantry armies, most of the wealth. The Blacks technically have more dragons even before the Dragon Seeds, but now really, and they have naval supremacy through the Velaryons. So they can move their forces quicker, but they're going to bring their numbers to bear eventually, that the Greens can afford to take losses the Blacks can't. And you'll see that as it goes, that Ormund is the commander of the biggest land army in Westeros, on either side, so he's reasonably important. And they did briefly explain this, pointing at a map in the council scenes in Season 2. I like that they try to do that for people who haven't read the book, just showing. First episode, Otto says, "My nephew Ormund is leading the Hightower army up through the Reach. Let's hope they don't run into trouble." And then in a later episode, Orwyle says, "The Beesburys and their allies are harassing him." So that slows them down. And then, right before Ulf buzzes King's Landing and interrupts them with Silverwing, Ironrod is reporting at the small council to Aemon that the Hightower army is bogged down, but your brother's dragon is just taken to wing. That's because, as you saw in episode 8 when they do that montage at the end, you actually see the Hightower army, and you see Tessarion, the Blue Queen, flying overhead. They haven't cast an actor yet, but that's Tessarion being ridden by Alicent's youngest son, Daeron Targaryen, called Daeron the Daring. And we keep calling him Daeron the Daring, so it's not. Intentionally, the names sound similar. So it's Daemon or Daeron with an R, so I say Daeron the Daring so you can tell them apart. But Ormund's big land army is accompanied by a relatively young dragon, but the enemies he's facing do not have dragons in the Reach. So even a relatively young one, it's just this is an outside context problem when they're attacking the Rowans and Tarleys and everyone in the Caswells, that he has Tessarion and they don't. So Ormund is accompanied by Tessarion being ridden by Daeron. And in terms of relationships and everything, because he's Otto's nephew, he is Alicent and Gwain's first cousin, which makes him first cousin once removed to Daeron on his mother's side. So Daeron is with his cousin Ormund, and it's more the implications of this that it implies that we're going to be seeing more of the Daeron storyline, that they could have left him off screen. They could have cast a relatively minor actor for this instead of someone who's in a decent amount of projects. We still don't know how much of the Reach subplot we're going to get, and I don't know if it'll be that much, or if it'll be a decent amount. Like, I felt we got a decent amount of the Riverland storyline with the Blackwood-Bracken feud in Season 2, even if they cut out a lot of characters from it. The general point stands. So I know they're going to condense things. It's a question of are they going to leave it out entirely, or it'll be enough to stand on its own. Like, Oscar Tully had a relatively good Season 2, even though he's only in about 8 minutes worth of material. So we'll have to see how they're doing that. I mean, they did take the time in Season 2 to set up more than once, this is who Ormund is. Who is Daeron? This whole big scene of Alicent explaining how maybe Daeron's a good person because he wasn't with me in King's Landing. They've invested the time in setting this stuff up. I think they at least want to do it. We'll see how much episode cuts affect things. I don't know how much we're actually going to see. Well, this culminates in what's called the Battle of the Honeywine, and they were setting this up, like I said, end of episode 7, where the Beesburys and their allies have they're attacking on multiple sides. They can't attack an army that big, but they're harassing it, using delaying tactics, hit and run, harassing their supply line, so they can't link up with the Greens' main armies in the Riverlands, and they were complaining about that. Even Kristen said, we should wait until the Hightower army is here, But Aemon goes, no, every day Rhaenyra's forces are getting stronger and coalescing around Harrenhal. We'll hit them in a pincers movement with the Lannisters from the west and us and Vhagar from the east. We can't wait for the High Towers. And that's a big question in war, just the, or any survival thing of, do I wait for reinforcements or do I strike now? Because if I wait too long, it's a wasted opportunity. So a big thing is that they can at least prevent the Green armies from linking up. And I'm going to have all sorts of videos about this when it comes out of the strategic and tactical moves, because that's always fun. But there's the Beesburys and also the Caswells. And I bring this up because they set up the Caswells a lot in Season 1. They're the Lords of Bitterbridge, which is this major river crossing, very strategic. And they set up that Lord Caswell, remember, he was that bald man who was one of Rhaenyra's few remaining supporters at court. He recurred multiple times in the back half of Season 1, and then when he tried to run away to warn her, they hanged him. They were setting up that, and they're angry. They killed Lord Caswell. Obviously, Orwell actually mentions the Beesburys are annoyed that Kristen personally killed their lord. So it's them and their allies, the Rowans, also House Tarly, and they managed to surround the Green's army. That even if you have a bigger army, being surrounded on two sides, you're outmaneuvered, and they're pinned against the Honeywine River. But then Tessarion comes and saves the day, because it counts more to have a dragon when the other side does not. So I don't know how much of the Honeywine you're going to see. It might be I'm hoping it's in. I don't think it'll be a huge set piece. You'll probably be relatively brief, but I'm hoping for something like the battle against the Crab Feeder we got, as it's not the hugest thing ever, but enough to get the story point across in one episode is what I'm hoping for. I don't think it'll be another thing on the scale of Rook's Rest, okay? But people want dragon action. It's one of the bigger battles in the thing. It really sets up Daeron well. As for Ormund himself, the guy actually cast here, played by James Norton, reason I bring up all of this, given that he's the main branch of the family, and who are his children, who's his wife, there's not many you need to know now, because a lot of this is setting up characters for the next generation in the book, because it's an ongoing history book, Fire and Blood. These become characters later. That Ormund Hightower, of the main branch of the Hightowers, he has 3 sons and a daughter, all by his first wife, but they're not really characters yet, so don't overburden yourself. You need to know who all these are. The oldest one, Lionel Hightower, he's only 15, so he doesn't need to go to war yet. This is setting up people for later. And I don't think it's spoilers to say, given that he has 3 sons and a daughter, future generations of the Hightowers descend from them, because they don't even go to the war. They don't get killed. And Marjorie Tyrell and her brother Loras, their mother was a Hightower, so they descend from Ormund. Alicent is their great-great-great aunt, not a direct ancestor. Ormund is a direct ancestor because they married into the Tyrells later. Though Ormund has these 4 children, they're all teenaged or younger, they're all by his first wife, who died in childbirth a few years ago. So his first wife is dead, but he later remarried to Sam Tarly. Lady Samantha Tarly, a beautiful maid young enough to be his daughter, given that, she's 17 years old and only 2 years older than his oldest son, Lionel. They play around with teenager things in the TV show, like how Rob and John were 14 in the book, changed to 16 in Season 1, same thing, but she's 2 years older than your oldest son. And the bigger problem with Sam Tarly is that their marriage grew strained, not just because she's a Tarly, but both of her parents are in reach houses that sided against them. Her father is, of course, a Tarly, hence her name. Her mother is from House Rowan, one of the other houses in the north of the Reach that turns on and directly fights the Hightower army. So family members on both sides are directly fighting her husband's army in the field in that fighting in the Reach. So her marriage to him becomes strained, and she's left in Old Town. And he didn't take any of his children with him to war, though. That Lionel's only 15. So because of all of that, Ormund leaves Lionel behind, that you're too young. I'm leaving you behind to take care of Old Town and your comely stepmother, Sam Tarly. I don't know how much of that might ever be in the TV series, so maybe they'll mention it in dialogue of, Oh, geez, I sure hope my son is taking care of his stepmother in the old town there, but we'll see what happens. While I'm on the subject, that this is the first casting news of season 3, let me tack on at the end here the related issue of new production crew announcements. That's everything for Ormund James Norton. As it so happened, just like 2 or 3 days before that, we got our first announcement of crew. We will have a new director in season 3, Nina Lopez Corrado. She is a veteran director. She started out working her way up as a production assistant on The Mentalist. She worked on it for 150 episodes across all 7 seasons, and then guest directed one episode in the final season. Then after that ended, she directed 1 or 2 episodes for a wide range of shows. Check out her IMDb profile, see if she's been on something you know. Like she directed for a couple episodes on Supernatural and on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And what she's probably better known for more recently in a directing capacity is she directed 16 episodes of that show, A Million Little Things. So she's an experienced director. And not just in general, but after that, she worked her way up to actually doing HBO shows. She directed for that Perry Mason reboot that HBO did 2 years ago. And probably her biggest hit so far is she was a director on season 1 of Netflix's hit show The Night Agent, season 1. Apparently that's like the most watched show on Netflix for last year, just because it's not the top show, but everyone likes it. Like a sci-fi show appeals to sci-fi fans, a romance show appeals to romance fans, but apparently, like a Venn diagram, just everyone liked The Night Agent enough to be like their number 3 show, so everyone ended up watching it more than any one specific top show. But she directed episodes for that. It was a well-received show. And more importantly for HBO, she has worked as a director on The Last of Us, but for season 2, which isn't out yet. I mean, they've obviously wrapped filming, but some people got confused when I explained this in the forum, that they said, oh, she's a Last of Us director, but I don't remember her episode. She is a director on the upcoming 2nd season, which is coming in April, which is wrapped because it's coming out in only 2 months. But she's experienced. I haven't seen her doing a lot of action things, but I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. Some of these other directors I really like didn't do action things. Like Claire Kilner isn't known for doing action things, but she's my favorite director on the show. Just in combination of the episodes she did, plus I like her style, which is more POV shots than the crane work is nice, but I know it's crane work. I have all things where I get into my specifics on the cinematography I like. Embarrassment of riches. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, that we have this new director, that we're only just beginning to hear production crew details for season 3. We know that costume designer Carolyn McCall from season 2 will return. She's nice, she was on Downton Abbey. And we're reasonably sure that production designer Jim Clay will return. He's great as well. Ormund has been cast. He is a major character in Daeron's storyline, which is probably the biggest remaining casting news we're going to get. The last major dragon-riding Targaryen like that. Barring 1 or 2 other changes down the line. So it isn't exaggeration to say I could wake up tomorrow to suddenly find that they've cast Daeron. More likely we're going to wake up tomorrow and find, oh, they've cast the Shepherd, or some other characters who may or may not be showing up in there. Maybe some associated characters, like I still kind of hope for, it wouldn't be a big role, but like Jess Redford would need to be in Jane Eyre's thing. Maybe Joanna Westerling, Jason Lannister's wife. Because they said the Harold Westerling was coming back. I'm not sure what they're doing with that, but this is how we're trying to piece together our outline for season 3 based on casting and filming news. And any day we could be getting any little casting news is still stuff we, the obsessive fans, like to go over. The fact that this is Ormund, the right-hand secondary character in the storyline of Daeron the Daring, there is a non-zero chance I could wake up tomorrow and just, oh, by the way, breaking news, they've cast Daeron. Because that's how the Ormond thing came. We didn't have rumblings about it. It's just, oh, suddenly I woke up and they announced, hey, Ormond has been cast. They might announce Daeron tomorrow. So we are out of our 4-month hibernation. Please like and subscribe and check back to my channel on a daily basis. So you can see that the news isn't coming out on a weekly basis anymore, and the off-season is now coming out on a daily basis, We are going to be getting filming news, eventually set reports, and particularly now in the month of February before actual filming, any day major new casting info could be coming out. So please like and subscribe and follow on my channel. There's a lot of news to cover and breaking news every day.